The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent beings. It floated in the empty space between three star systems. Its walls were made of crystal that had been grown over 10,000 years. Its ceiling showed the light of 1,000,000 distant stars. And on this day, it held the representatives of the 12 most powerful species in the known universe. Ambassador of the Empire sat at the head of the massive circular table. His 4 eyes scanned the room with the calm confidence of a being whose species had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. They were tall and thin, with skin the color of dark blue water. They moved slowly and spoke even more slowly. Time meant nothing to a species that lived for 3,000 years. To his left sat the delegation of the collective. They were small creatures, no taller than a human child, but their minds were connected in a vast network that spanned their entire civilization. When one spoke, it spoke with the knowledge of billions. Their representative, a being known only as Voice of Many, sat perfectly still. Its large black eyes reflected the lights of the great hall like 2 dark mirrors. They occupied the next position. They were beings of pure energy, contained within specially designed suits that gave them solid form. Their representative, High Conductor, hummed with barely contained power. They had mastered the manipulation of energy itself. They could destroy planets with a thought. They could also heal the sick and feed the hungry. They chose destruction more often than not. Around the table sat the other great powers, the massive creatures of stone and metal who built things that lasted forever, the beings who communicated only through thought and considered spoken language to be primitive, the warriors whose empire was built on the bones of conquered worlds, and 6 others, each powerful in their own way, each ancient beyond human understanding. At the far end of the table, almost as an afterthought, sat the human delegation. There were 3 of them. A woman with gray hair and sharp eyes named. She was the lead negotiator for the United Earth government. Beside her sat a young man with dark skin and a calm face. His name was David, and he was Earth's military advisor. The third was a woman with red hair and a small smile that never seemed to leave her face. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was Earth's expert on alien psychology. The other species looked at the humans with various expressions. Some showed contempt. Some showed amusement. A few showed something close to pity. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. They had only made contact with the galactic community 40 years ago. In the eyes of the elder species, they were children playing at being adults. Ambassador spoke first. His voice was deep and slow, like the movement of glaciers. "We have gathered here to discuss the integration of the human species into the Galactic Accord," he said. "This is a matter of great importance. The terms of this integration will determine the relationship between humanity and the rest of the civilized galaxy for the next 10,000 years." Leaned forward slightly. "We appreciate the opportunity to join the Accord," she said. "Earth is eager to become a full member of the galactic community." A sound came from the delegation. It might have been laughter, though it was hard to tell with beings that shared one mind. "Full member," Voice of Many repeated. "The human speaks of full membership as if it were something within reach. This is amusing. Full membership requires certain qualifications: technological advancement, cultural stability, military capability. Humanity has none of these things." His expression did not change. "We may be young compared to your species," she said, "but we have made remarkable progress in a very short time. 60 years ago, we could not leave our own planet. Now we have colonies in 3 star systems. We have developed technologies that even older species have found interesting." "Interesting is not the same as valuable," High Conductor said. His voice crackled with energy. "Your species has created a few clever toys. This does not make you equal to civilizations that have existed since before your planet formed." David shifted in his seat but said nothing. His hand rested on the table, fingers tapping a slow rhythm that only Sarah Mitchell seemed to notice. Let us be clear about what is being offered, Ambassador said. He pressed a control on the table before him, and a holographic document appeared in the air above the center of the table. These are the terms of humanity's integration into the Galactic Accord. Studied the document. Her face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes, something that the other species were too old and too proud to recognize. I see, she said slowly. Perhaps you could summarize the main points for the record. Made a gesture that might have been a shrug. It is simple. Humanity will be granted observer status in the Accord. This means you may attend meetings and submit proposals, but you will have no voting rights. Your colonies outside your home system will be placed under the protection of the Empire. In exchange for this protection, you will pay a yearly tribute of raw materials. Your military fleet will be limited to defensive vessels only. Any ship capable of traveling faster than light will require approval from the Council before construction. He paused and looked at the human delegation. Additionally, humans will not be permitted to colonize any world within 50 light-years of an existing Accord member's territory without that member's explicit approval. Any technology you develop must be shared with the Council for review. Technologies deemed dangerous will be confiscated. The hall was silent. The other species watched the humans with expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. This was how things had always been done. Young species accepted the terms offered to them. They had no choice. The alternative was to remain outside the Accord, alone and unprotected in a dangerous universe. Sarah Mitchell's small smile had not changed, but her eyes were focused on the other delegations. She was watching their reactions, recording every small movement, every subtle expression. This was her job, to understand, to predict, to know what the aliens were thinking before they thought it. Stood up, this was unusual. In formal council proceedings, representatives remained seated. Standing was considered aggressive, almost threatening. The other species watched her with new interest. I have a question, said. Her voice was calm and clear. In the entire history of the Galactic Accord, how many species have been offered full membership upon first contact? Ambassador blinked his 4 eyes slowly. This question is not relevant to the current discussion. I think it is very relevant, said. Please answer. There was a long pause. Finally, Voice of Many spoke. No species has ever been offered full membership upon first contact. All species begin as observers. This is the way of things. I see, said. And how long does a species typically remain at observer status before being considered for full membership? Another pause. This time it was longer. The average is approximately 2,000 years, they admitted. Nodded slowly. 2,000 years. And during that time the observer species must pay tribute to existing members, must limit its military, must share all its technology, must ask permission to expand, to build, to grow. These terms are for your protection, High Conductor said. There was a hint of irritation in his crackling voice. Young species do not understand the dangers of the galaxy. Without the guidance of elder civilizations, you would destroy yourselves within a century. Perhaps, said, but I have another question. In the history of the Accord, has any species ever actually graduated from observer status to full membership? The silence that followed was absolute. Not one of the 12 great powers spoke. Not one of them moved. Sarah Mitchell's smile grew slightly wider. She had done her research. She knew the answer. And now everyone in the room knew that the humans knew the answer. I thought not, said. She sat down and folded her hands on the table before her. Her expression was perfectly neutral, but there was something new in her eyes, something that made several of the elder species shift uncomfortably in their seats. Let me tell you what I see, said. I see a group of old civilizations that have grown comfortable with their power. I see a system designed to keep young species weak and dependent. I see tribute payments that drain resources. I see military limits that prevent growth. I see technology sharing that ensures no observer can ever develop anything that might threaten the status of the elder races. You speak out of ignorance, Ambassador said. His voice was cold. You do not understand the complexities of galactic politics. I understand more than you think, said. I understand that they have not invented anything new in 10,000 years because they have become fat on the technology stolen from observer species. I understand that the Empire has not won a war in 5,000 years because they have grown weak fighting only species that are forbidden to have proper armies. I understand that the great themselves have not explored new space in 20,000 years because they see no need to expand when they can simply take from others. The hall erupted in noise. Several species spoke at once, their voices overlapping in a chaos of outrage and disbelief. No one had ever spoken to the council this way. No observer species had ever dared. Ambassador raised one thin hand, and the noise died away. You are young, he said. His voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. You do not know what you are saying. You do not know what you risk. We know exactly what we risk, David spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but carried easily through the great hall. We have studied your history. We have studied your wars. We know what happens to species that refuse the accord. We know about the who were wiped out for declining observer status. We know about the whose was sterilized for attempting to build unauthorized warships. He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each delegation in turn. We know that you will threaten us, he continued. We know that you may attack us. We know that by our own estimation, we have perhaps a 30% chance of surviving as a species if we reject your terms. Ambassador nodded slowly. Then you understand your position. You understand that acceptance is your only rational choice. No, David said. We understand that acceptance means slow death instead of quick death. We understand that in 2,000 years of observer status, we would become dependent on your protection, addicted to your technology, unable to survive without your approval. We would become slaves wearing the disguise of allies. He leaned forward, and his eyes were hard as stone. We would rather die free than live as what you would make us. The hall fell silent again. This time, the silence had a different quality. It was the silence of beings who had just heard something they did not understand. Stood once more. She straightened her jacket, adjusted her collar, and looked at each of the 12 great powers in turn. Earth formally declines the offer of observer status in the Galactic Accord, she said. Her voice rang through the crystal hall like a bell. We will not pay tribute. We will not limit our military. We will not share our technology. We will not ask permission to live and grow as we see fit. This is madness, Voice of Many said. You are signing the death warrant of your entire species. Perhaps, said, but that is our choice to make, not yours. She gathered her documents and placed them in her bag. David and Sarah rose as well, moving with the kind of calm that comes from having accepted whatever consequences might follow. We will leave now, said. If you decide to destroy us, we will resist. If you decide to leave us alone, we will continue our development in peace. Either way, we will do so as free beings, not as subjects. She turned toward the door of the great hall. Wait, Ambassador said. There was something in his voice that had not been there before, something that might have been concern or confusion or perhaps even a trace of fear. You cannot simply leave. There are procedures, protocols. No species has ever walked away from the negotiation table. Paused at the door, she looked back over her shoulder, and for the first time she smiled. Then I suppose we will be the first, she said. And with that, the 3 humans walked out of the great hall, leaving the 12 most powerful species in the universe sitting in stunned silence. For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Conductor spoke, his voice crackling with barely contained energy. Should we stop them? Should we destroy their ship before it can return to there? Ambassador did not answer immediately. He was staring at the door through which the humans had departed. His 4 eyes were narrowed in thought. "No," he said finally. "Not yet. Let them go. Let them return to their planet and tell their people what they have done. Let them experience the consequences of their arrogance." "And then," Voice of Many asked. "And then we will decide what to do with them," said. "They are a young species. They do not understand what they have set in motion. They do not understand that they have just changed the course of galactic history." He turned to face the other delegations, and for the first time in thousands of years, the great ambassador of the Empire looked uncertain. "The question is," he said slowly, "whether they have changed it for the better or for the worse, and I am no longer sure that we are the ones who will make that determination." Outside the great hall, in the cold emptiness of space, the human ship was already accelerating toward home. On its bridge, sat in her chair and looked out at the stars. "Did we do the right thing?" David asked. Did not answer for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know that we did the only thing we could do, the only thing that gave us any chance at all." Sarah Mitchell came to stand beside them. Her small smile was gone now, replaced by an expression of grim determination. "The universe will be watching now," she said. "Every species, every civilization, every being with the ability to look at the stars, they will all be watching to see what happens next." "Then we had better make sure they see something worth watching," said. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Galactic Council behind. And in the great crystal hall, the 12 ancient powers began to argue about what they had just witnessed, not knowing that the small, young, fragile species they had tried to make their subjects had just fired the first shot in a war that would reshape the entire galaxy. The universe had just been stirred, and it would never be the same again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In the deep mining colonies of the workers stopped their machines and gathered around communication screens. In the energy farms of the beings of pure light paused their endless harvesting to listen. In the connected minds of the collective, billions of voices whispered in surprise and confusion. The humans had walked out. The young species from the small blue planet had looked at the terms offered by the most powerful civilizations in existence, and they had said no. It was unheard of, it was impossible, it was terrifying. On a planet called Eth that orbited 3 suns, Emperor sat on his crystal chair and listened to his advisors argue. "They must be destroyed immediately," said General Han, the commander of the military forces. "They have insulted the Empire. They have insulted the Accord. If we allow this behavior to go unpunished, other species will think they can do the same." "Destroying them is wasteful," said Chancellor L., who oversaw the Empire's economic affairs. "They are a young species, yes, but they have shown remarkable ability in technology development. Their computing systems are faster than anything we have created in 10,000 years. Their medical technology has already saved lives. We should conquer them instead. Make them serve us directly, rather than through the Accord." "Both options carry risks," said High Priest, or the oldest member of the council. His skin was so dark it was almost black, a sign of extreme age among the. "We do not fully understand these humans. They do not think like other young species. They do not behave like other young species. Before we act, we must understand why they made this choice." Emperor raised one hand, and his advisors fell silent. "What do we know about them?" he asked. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute power. "Tell me about these humans." Chancellor L consulted a data screen. "They evolved on the 3rd planet of an unremarkable star in a quiet region of the galaxy. Their planet is mostly water, with conditions that most species would consider harsh. Temperature extremes, violent weather, dangerous animal life." "That is not unusual," General Han said. "Many species develop on difficult worlds." "True," L agreed. But what is unusual is their development speed. Most species take millions of years to develop civilization. The humans did it in less than 50,000. Most species take thousands of years to develop space travel after inventing the wheel. The humans did it in less than 6,000. They are fast learners, High Priest said. This is known, but speed alone does not explain their behavior today. There is more, El said. He hesitated before continuing. Our researchers have studied human history. It is different from ours. Different how? The Emperor asked. They fight constantly, El said. Among themselves, against their environment, against anything that stands in their way. In the last 1,000 years of their recorded history, they have had only 200 years of total peace. And even during those peaceful years, there were small conflicts happening somewhere on their planet. That is madness, General Han said. A species that fights itself constantly should destroy itself long before reaching space. And yet they did not, High Priest said. His old eyes were thoughtful. They fought themselves and they survived. They conquered their planet and they grew stronger. Each war taught them new things. Each conflict pushed them to develop new technologies. They are dangerous, General Han said. More dangerous than we realized. We should have destroyed them when we first discovered them. Perhaps, Emperor said, but we did not, and now we must decide what to do. He stood from his throne and walked to the great window that showed the 3 sons of his. For a long moment, he was silent. Prepare the fleet, he said finally. But do not attack. Not yet. I want to know more about these humans. I want to understand why they are not afraid of us. In the great hive mind of the collective, the discussion was very different. They did not have individual leaders. They did not have separate thoughts or personal opinions. Every was connected to every other, and together they formed a single consciousness that spanned their entire civilization. But today, for the first time in 1,000 years, that consciousness was not in agreement. Part of the collective wanted to ignore the humans. They were a small species on a small planet, far from territory. Their rejection of the accord did not affect the collective directly. Another part wanted to destroy them. The humans were unpredictable. Unpredictable things were dangerous. Dangerous things should be eliminated before they could cause harm. A third part, smaller than the others but growing, wanted to contact the humans directly. Not through the accord, not through the council, just the humans talking without the interference of others. This third part was curious. It had studied the humans more closely than any other species had. It had watched their broadcasts, read their literature, examined their art, and it had found something unexpected. The humans were creative. All species had some capacity for creativity. It was necessary for survival, for adaptation, for growth. But the humans had it in quantities that they had never seen before. They created things not because they needed them, but because they wanted them. They painted pictures that served no practical purpose. They wrote stories about things that had never happened. They made music that communicated emotions too complex for words. The curious part of the collective had a theory. It believed that this creativity was connected to the human strange behavior at the council. Other species accepted the accord because they could not imagine any other choice. The humans had rejected it because they could imagine 1,000 other choices. This made them dangerous, yes, but it also made them valuable. The debate continued within the collective. Billions of minds argued and considered and weighed options. And slowly, very slowly, the curious part began to gain support. Meanwhile, in the crystal towers of the energy realm, High Conductor was having a crisis of faith. They believed in power. They believed that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. This belief had guided their civilization for longer than most species had existed. It was simple, clean, and effective. But the humans had challenged this belief. They were weak. By any measure of military power, they were among the weakest species in the galaxy. A single war fleet could destroy their entire civilization in less than a day, and yet they had looked at the assembled might of the Accord and said no. This made no sense to weak species submitted to strong species. This was the natural order. This was the way the universe worked. The humans should have accepted any terms offered to them because they had no power to refuse. But they had refused anyway. Floated through the energy streams of his realm, thinking. His mind was troubled in ways it had not been troubled for centuries. He found himself wondering if the definition of power was incomplete. The humans had no great fleets. They had no ancient weapons. They had no vast territories or countless soldiers. But they had walked out of the council and no one had stopped them. They had the 12 greatest powers in the galaxy and they were still alive. Was there a kind of power that they did not understand? Was there strength in something other than force? These thoughts disturbed deeply. He decided to put them aside and focus on practical matters. The council would meet again soon. There would be decisions to make, actions to take. The humans would be dealt with one way or another. But somewhere in the depths of his energy-based mind, the questions remained, and they would not go away. On Earth, the mood was very different. When ship returned to the solar system, the entire planet was watching. The negotiations had been broadcast live across every network. Billions of humans had seen their representatives refuse the accord. Billions had held their breath, waiting to see if the great powers would destroy them on the spot. Now those billions erupted in a chaos of emotion. Some were terrified. They had seen the power of the elder species. They knew what the accord could do to those who it. They believed that had condemned humanity to extinction. Some were angry. They felt that the decision should have been made by the people, not by 3 diplomats on a distant station. They demanded that the government negotiate again, accept whatever terms were offered, do anything to avoid the coming war. But many were proud. These were the ones who gathered in the streets of every city, waving flags and singing songs. They had watched their species stand up to the greatest powers in existence. They had seen tell the ancient rulers of the galaxy that humanity would rather die than be slaves. For the first time in decades, humans felt united. The old divisions of nation and culture seemed small compared to the choice they now faced together. Whatever came next, they would face it as one species. Did not join the celebrations. She went directly from her ship to a secure facility beneath the government headquarters in New Geneva. There, she met with the leaders of the United Earth government. President Williams was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had held his office for 6 years, longer than any president before him. The weight of those years showed in his face as he looked at his chief negotiator. "Tell me honestly," he said, "did we make the right choice?" Sat down heavily in a chair. She was exhausted. The trip home had been long and she had not slept since leaving the council. "I don't know if there is a right choice," she said. "If we had accepted their terms, we would have survived as a species, but we would have stopped being human. In 2,000 years, our descendants would have been creatures without ambition, without drive, without the will to grow and explore and become more than we are. And now we have a chance, a small chance but a real one. The elder species are powerful, but they are also old. They have not faced a real challenge in a very long time. They have forgotten how to adapt, how to change, how to fight against something they do not understand." General Thomas Jackson, the head of Earth's military forces, spoke up. "Our analysts have been running simulations. If the Accord attacks us with full force, we have approximately a 15% chance of survival." "That is worse than the 30% you quoted at the council," President Williams said. "I was being optimistic," David said. He had joined them in the secure room along with Sarah Mitchell. "We wanted to show them that we were not afraid. Fear would have made us look weak." "But we are weak," General Jackson said. "We have 12 battle cruisers and perhaps 200 smaller vessels. The Alone have more than 10,000 ships of the line. If they decide to destroy us, we cannot stop them." "Then why did you support this decision?" President Williams asked. General Jackson was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Because I have studied our history," he said. "Humanity has faced extinction before. We have faced ice ages and plagues and wars that killed billions. Every time we found a way to survive, not through strength alone, but through creativity, through adaptation, through our refusal to give up even when giving up seemed like the only option." He looked at the others around the table. The elder species have never faced extinction. They have never been pushed to the edge and forced to fight for survival. They do not know what we know. They do not understand what we are capable of when our backs are against the wall. "So we bet everything on human stubbornness," President Williams said. "We bet everything on human nature," corrected. "On the same nature that took us from caves to the stars in 50,000 years. On the same nature that built civilizations and tore them down and built them again, each time better than before." She stood and walked to a window that showed the night sky over New Geneva. "The elder species are right to be afraid of us," she said. "Not because we are strong, but because we are different. We think differently. We dream differently. We refuse to accept limits that other species take for granted." She turned back to face them. "They gave us a choice between slavery and death. We chose neither. We chose to forge our own path, whatever the cost, and that is something they have never seen before, something they do not know how to fight." President Williams nodded slowly. "Then we had better start preparing. If war is coming, we need to be ready." "War may not come," Sarah Mitchell said. Everyone looked at her in surprise. She had been quiet throughout the meeting, her small smile absent from her face. "Explain," the president said. Sarah stood and activated a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy, with the territories of the various species marked in different colors. "The Accord is not as unified as it appears," she said. "The 12 great powers have different interests, different goals, different fears. Some want to destroy us. Some want to conquer us. Some want to study us. And some, I believe, are secretly glad we walked away." She pointed to several regions on the map. "These are the territories of younger species, species who joined the Accord centuries or ago, species who are still paying tribute, still limited in their military, still waiting for a promotion that will never come. For them, our rejection of the Accord is not a threat. It is a hope." "You think they might support us?" General Jackson asked. "I think they might not actively oppose us," Sarah said. "And in a conflict with the elder species, that could make all the difference." The meeting continued for several more hours. Plans were made, resources were allocated, and messages were sent to Earth's colonies in other star systems. The human species was preparing for whatever came next. But in the back of everyone's mind was a single question. Had they made the right choice, or had they just sentenced their species to destruction? Only time would tell. And across the galaxy, in crystal halls and energy realms and connected hive minds, the elder species were watching. They had ruled the stars for longer than humanity had existed. They had destroyed countless civilizations that dared to challenge them. But something was different this time. Something had changed. The universe felt unstable in a way it had not felt for. The humans had walked away from the table of negotiation. And the universe would never be the same. 3 months passed after the humans walked away from the negotiation table. 3 months in which the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the war that everyone expected. But the war did not come. The elder species argued endlessly about what to do. They wanted to make an example of humanity, but they wanted others to share the cost and the blame. They had the power to destroy Earth in a matter of hours, but they could not decide if it was worth the energy expenditure. They were eager to fight, but their military had grown soft after without a real enemy, and their generals secretly worried about what might happen if the humans proved harder to defeat than expected. And while the great powers argued, something else was happening, something that would change everything. On the distant world of Prime, a planet that belonged to a species called a rebellion was beginning. They were a middle-aged species by galactic standards. They had joined the Accord 5,000 years ago, when their civilization was young and their military was weak. They had paid their tribute faithfully for 5. They had limited their fleet as required. They had shared their technology as demanded. And in all that time, they had never advanced beyond observer status. Now, inspired by the humans, they were asking questions that they had never dared to ask before. Governor stood before the Planetary Council, his three-fingered hands trembling slightly as he spoke. "We have been loyal servants of the Accord for 5,000 years, he said. "We have done everything asked of us. We have followed every rule, obeyed every order, accepted every humiliation. And what has it gained us?" The council chamber was silent. This was dangerous talk. Speaking against the Accord was punishable by death. "I will tell you what it has gained us," continued. "Nothing. We are no closer to full membership now than we were when our ancestors first signed the treaty. Our children and our children's children will live and die as observers, paying tribute to species who have forgotten what it means to struggle, to grow, to earn their place in the universe." A name stood up. His face was pale with fear. "Governor, please, you must not speak this way. If the council hears of this, they will destroy us." "Perhaps," said, "but perhaps not. The humans the council 3 months ago and they are still alive. The elder species are afraid to attack them. Do you know why?" "Because they are mad," said. "Because their defiance has frozen the council with indecision." "Because the elder species have forgotten how to take risks," said. "They have ruled for so long that they have forgotten what it feels like to face an uncertain outcome. The humans reminded them that the universe is not as predictable as they believed, and now they are afraid to act, because any action might lead to consequences they cannot control." He looked around the council chamber, meeting the eyes of each in turn. "We have a choice," he said. "We can continue to serve the Accord, paying tribute until our resources are exhausted and our spirit is broken. Or we can follow the example of the humans. We can stand up and say no." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some argued for caution. Others argued for defiance. In the end, a vote was taken, and by a narrow margin, they decided to send a message to the elder species. They would stop paying tribute. They would begin building warships without permission. They would not leave the Accord entirely, but they would demand new terms. It was a compromise, less dramatic than what the humans had done, but it was still unprecedented. No observer species had ever the Accord in any way. And they were not alone. Across the galaxy, other species began to question their place in the Accord. The who had been observers for 8,000 years. The Velt, who had been promised full membership 6 times and it's 6 times. The whose tribute payments had bankrupted 3 generations. The whose best technologies had been confiscated and given to elder species who claimed credit for inventing them. None of these species had the courage to do what the humans had done, but all of them were watching, all of them were waiting, all of them were hoping that somehow the small species from the small blue planet would survive. In the crystal hall of the Galactic Council, the 12 great powers gathered once again. Ambassador looked around the table with his 4 eyes, and for the first time in his long life, he felt afraid. "The situation is becoming unstable," he said. "We have received reports of unrest in 47 observer systems. They have openly our tribute demands. They have begun building unauthorized vessels. The Velt have expelled our diplomatic mission from there." "All because of the humans," High Conductor said. His energy form flickered with agitation. "We should have destroyed them immediately. Now their defiance has spread like a disease." "Destroying them now will not solve the problem," voice of many said. The damage has been done. The observer species have seen that defiance is possible. They have seen that the great powers can be challenged without immediate destruction. Killing the humans now will only make them into martyrs. Then what do you suggest? General of the Empire demanded. His warriors were restless, eager for battle after of peace. Should we simply allow this rebellion to continue? Should we watch as our authority crumbles? We must make an example, said High Architect of the. His stone body ground against itself as he spoke. Not of the humans, but of the lesser rebellions. We must destroy the, crush the, scatter the veldt to the cosmic winds. We must show all species that defiance leads to death. That will require resources, Ambassador said. Ships, soldiers, supplies. Are you willing to commit forces to this cause? There was a long silence. The great powers had not fought a real war in thousands of years. Their militaries were vast but untested. The cost of deploying them against multiple targets would be enormous. Perhaps we should not think in terms of punishment, said Whisper of Thought, the representative of the. This was unusual. The rarely spoke in council meetings, preferring to communicate through thought alone. Perhaps we should think in terms of adaptation. Explain, Ambassador said. The Accord was designed for a galaxy in which young species had no alternatives, Whisper of Thought said. They could join us or stand alone against the dangers of the universe. They chose to join because they feared what would happen if they did not. The paused, collecting its thoughts. But the humans have created a new alternative. They have shown that it is possible to reject the Accord and survive. Even if they do not survive in the end, the idea will remain. And ideas are more dangerous than armies. What would you have us do? High Conductor demanded. Negotiate with these rebels, offer them better terms. I would have us consider why they are rebelling, Whisper of Thought said. I would have us ask ourselves if the Accord still serves its original purpose, or if it has become something else entirely. This suggestion was met with shock and outrage. Several species spoke at once, their voices overlapping in a chaos of denial and accusation. The Accord was sacred. The Accord was eternal. The Accord had kept peace in the galaxy for 100,000 years. But Ambassador noticed something interesting. Not all of the great powers were speaking. They were silent. Even they, despite their earlier call for punishment, seemed hesitant. There were cracks in the unity of the 12. Cracks that had not existed before the humans walked out of this very room. While the great powers argued, the humans were not idle. In a secret facility orbiting Earth's moon, a team of scientists and engineers was working on something that would change the balance of power forever. Dr. Sarah, no relation to the diplomat, stood before a holographic display showing the most complex piece of technology ever created by human hands. We call it the Nexus Drive, she said to the assembled military and government officials. It is based on principles that the elder species have never discovered because they stopped looking for new things thousands of years ago. What does it do? General Jackson asked. In simple terms, it allows a ship to travel faster than any vessel in the known galaxy, Doctor said. Current faster-than-light technology bends space to reduce the distance between 2 points. The Nexus Drive does something different. It creates a temporary bridge between 2 points in space, allowing instantaneous travel regardless of distance. The room was silent as the implication sank in. You mean we could travel from here to the center of the galaxy in an instant? President Williams asked. In theory, yes, Doctor said. In practice, there are limitations. The drive requires enormous amounts of energy to create large bridges. We can currently manage jumps of approximately 100 light-years with the energy output of a small star. That is still far beyond anything the elder species possess, General Jackson said. His eyes were bright with hope. With this technology, we could outrun any pursuit, strike any target, escape any trap. There is more, Doctor said. The drive also has military applications. The bridge it creates is a two-way connection. If we can stabilize it long enough, we can use it to transport weapons and troops. We could bypass enemy fleets entirely and strike directly at their. President William stood up slowly. His face was a mixture of hope and fear. How long until this technology is ready for deployment? The first prototype will be ready in 6 months, Doctor said. Full production capacity within 2 years. 6 months, 2 years. The humans had survived 3 months since the council meeting. They needed to survive much longer. But for the first time, they had a real chance. Far away, in a region of space that no other species had ever visited, something ancient was stirring. The being had no name that any living creature would recognize. It had existed since before the first stars formed, when the universe was young and full of chaos. It had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations. It had seen empires born and destroyed, species evolve and go extinct, galaxies collide and merge. It had slept for 100 million years, dreaming dreams too vast for any ordinary mind to comprehend. But now something had disturbed its slumber. Something had sent ripples through the fabric of spacetime itself. The being opened its awareness and looked out at the galaxy. It saw the 12 great powers, ancient and proud and stagnant. It saw the observer species, trapped in cycles of tribute and submission. It saw the small rebellions beginning to flare, like sparks in dry grass. And it saw the humans. The being studied them with curiosity. They were such a young species, barely a heartbeat old by cosmic standards. Their civilization was primitive, their technology simple, their understanding of the universe limited. But there was something about them, something that the being had not seen in a very long time. They burned with a fire that most species lost long before reaching the stars. They refused to accept limits that other creatures took for granted. They dreamed of things that had never existed and then made those dreams real. The being remembered other species like this, species that had changed the galaxy, for better or for worse. Most of them had destroyed themselves before reaching their potential, but some had survived. Some had become something greater than anyone could have imagined. Perhaps these humans would destroy themselves as so many others had. Perhaps they would be crushed by the elder species who feared their potential. Perhaps they would fade into obscurity, their moment of defiance forgotten in the endless flow of cosmic time. Or perhaps not. The being decided to watch more closely. It had time. It had nothing but time. And after 100 million years of sleep, it was curious to see what would happen next. Back on Earth, stood on the balcony of her apartment and looked up at the stars. She had become a symbol of human defiance, famous across the planet and beyond. But she did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who had thrown a stone at a giant and was waiting to see if the giant would notice. Her communicator buzzed. She looked at the message and felt her heart skip a beat. It was from a source she did not recognize, transmitted through channels that should have been impossible to access. The message was simple. The collective wishes to speak with you. Alone, without the knowledge of the council, we have much to discuss. Stared at the message for a long time. The universe was stirring. Things were changing faster than anyone had expected. And in the midst of it all, humanity was at the center, small and fragile and determined. She typed a response, where and when. The answer came immediately. A location will be provided. Be ready to travel. This conversation will change everything. Deleted the messages and went back inside. She had work to do. The game was just beginning. The meeting with the took place in a dead system, orbiting a star that had burned out millions of years ago. Arrived alone, as instructed, in a small shuttle that had been modified to avoid detection. Voice of Many was waiting for her aboard a vessel that appeared to be made of living tissue. The interior was warm and wet, and had to resist the urge to wipe her hands on her clothes as she followed her guide to the meeting chamber. "You are brave to come here alone," Voice of Many said. Its large black eyes showed no expression, but there was something in its tone that might have been respect. "Many would assume this is a trap." "It probably is a trap," said, "but I am here anyway. Your message said this conversation would change everything. I want to hear what you have to say." They made a sound that might have been laughter. "Direct, efficient, we appreciate these qualities, please sit." Sat on a chair that seemed to grow out of the floor to meet her. It was surprisingly comfortable. "The collective has been watching humanity since before you achieved space travel," Voice of Many said. "We found your species interesting, different from others we have observed." "Different how?" "You adapt. Other species develop along predictable paths. They discover fire, then agriculture, then industry, then space travel, following the same pattern that all civilizations follow. But humans do not follow patterns. You leap ahead, fall back, change direction, try things that no logical being would attempt." Voice of Many moved closer, its body flowing like water. "When your ancestors were still using stone tools, you had developed art and music and storytelling. When other species were building their first cities, you had already destroyed civilizations and built new ones from the ruins. You are chaos given form, and chaos is something the galaxy has not seen in a very long time. Considered this. Is that why you contacted me? Because we are chaotic?" "We contacted you because we believe you might survive," Voice of Many said. "And if you survive, you will change everything." "The Council wants us destroyed." "The Council cannot agree on anything," Voice of Many said. "They want to make an example of you. They want to study you. They want to fight you. They want to steal your technology. They argue endlessly while the universe shifts around them." There was a long pause. When Voice of Many spoke again, its voice was different, softer, more individual. "The collective is not as unified as it appears. There are factions within our shared mind. Some believe in the old ways and the eternal stability of the Accord, but others have grown tired of stagnation. We have been connected for 100,000 years, sharing every thought, every memory, every dream. And in all that time we have not changed. We have not grown. We have not become anything more than what we were when we first joined together." The move to a wall that became transparent, showing the dead star outside. "The humans have reminded us of something we had forgotten. That change is not always dangerous. That risk is not always foolish. That sometimes the only way forward is to let go of what you have and reach for something new." Stood and joined Voice of Many at the window. "You want to help us," she said. It was not a question. "Part of the collective does," Voice of Many said. "We cannot openly support you. We cannot break from the Accord, but we can share information. We can warn you of danger. We can give you time to prepare." "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for a promise," Voice of Many said. "If you survive, if you grow strong, if you change the galaxy as we believe you will not become what the elder species have become. You will not grow old and stagnant and afraid. You will keep the fire that makes you different." Was quiet for a long moment. "That is a strange request," she said finally. "You want us to promise to stay human." "We want you to promise to keep being chaos," Voice of Many said. "To keep challenging, questioning, growing, changing. To never accept that things must be the way they are simply because that is how they have always been." Extended her hand. It was a human gesture, but Voice of Many seemed to understand its meaning. A tendril of flesh extended from the body and wrapped gently around's fingers. "You have a deal," said. The journey home was long but did not sleep. She studied the data that they had given her. Ship positions, military strengths, political divisions, technological secrets. Information that would have taken years to gather through normal means. But there was something else in the data, something that made its blood run cold. A warning. They had discovered something in a distant region of space, something ancient and powerful, something that had been sleeping for 100 million years. And it was waking up. The crisis began 2 weeks later. In a star system called At the Edge of Space, 3 planets disappeared. Not destroyed, not moved, simply gone. One moment they were there, orbiting their sun as they had for billions of years. The next moment there was nothing, no debris, no radiation, no trace that they had ever existed. They sent a fleet to investigate. The fleet disappeared as well. They sent a larger fleet, accompanied by some of their most powerful beings. This fleet reported strange readings, impossible energy signatures, and then went silent. When relief ships arrived, they found nothing but empty space. Panic spread through the civilization. They had never encountered anything they could not understand or destroy. Their mastery of energy was supposed to make them invincible, but something was killing them, and they did not even know what it was. High Conductor called an emergency meeting of the council. His energy form flickered with colors that other species had never seen before, colors that indicated emotions too extreme for words. "We are under attack," he said. His voice crackled and sparked. "Something is destroying our systems. We have lost 7 planets and 4 fleets in the past week. Whatever this thing is, it is beyond our ability to stop." "What do you want from us?" Ambassador asked. Despite his calm exterior, even he was disturbed by the fear in this voice. They were among the most powerful beings in the galaxy. If something frightened them, it should frighten everyone. "We need help," said. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. "We need the combined might of the Accord to face this threat." "What exactly is this threat?" Voice of Many asked. "We do not know," admitted. "Our sensors cannot detect it. Our weapons cannot harm it. Our ships cannot escape it. All we know is that it came from the direction of the outer dark, from regions of space that have never been explored." The council erupted in discussion. The outer dark was a legend, a myth used to frighten young species into obedience. It was supposed to be the place where the universe ended, where space and time broke down into chaos. No one actually believed anything lived there. But something was coming from that direction. Something was killing the... "We will send observers," Ambassador said finally. "We will assess the situation and determine an appropriate response." "That will take too long," said. "By the time you finish assessing, we may all be dead." "Then what would you have us do?" Was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "We need the humans." The silence that followed was absolute. "Explain," said. "Our scientists have been studying the threat," said. "We cannot detect it through normal means, but we believe it operates on principles that are completely different from anything we understand, principles that require a different kind of thinking to comprehend." He looked around the table. "The humans think differently than any other species we have encountered. They have developed technologies based on principles we never considered. If anyone can find a way to understand this threat, it is them." "You want us to ask the humans for help," Voice of Many said. "The same humans we have threatened to destroy." "I want us to survive," said. "Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford." On Earth, the humans had already noticed the crisis. Dr. Sarah stood before the scientific council, her face pale with excitement and fear. "We have detected massive energy fluctuations in space," she said. "Something is happening there, something big." "They warned us about this," said. She had shared the information from her secret meeting with the leadership. "They said they had awakened something ancient." "What kind of something?" President Williams asked. "We do not know," said. "They were not specific, but they were afraid, and if something frightens thee and it should concern us as well." "This could be an opportunity," General Jackson said. All eyes turned to him. "The elder species are in trouble. They will need help, our help. This could be the chance we have been waiting for." "You want to help the same beings who threatened to destroy us?" David asked. "I want to survive," General Jackson said. "And right now, the best way to survive is to make ourselves valuable. If we can help solve this crisis, we will have leverage. Leverage we desperately need." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity should stay out of the conflict and let the elder species handle their own problems. Others argued that anything threatening them might eventually threaten Earth. In the end, President Williams made the decision. "We will offer assistance," he said, "but on our terms. We will not beg for acceptance. We will present ourselves as partners, not servants." Was chosen to carry the message. She traveled back to the Crystal Hall of the Galactic Council, the same hall from which she had walked out months before. The reception was very different this time. The 12 great powers watched her enter with a mixture of hope and resentment. They needed her. They hated needing her. It was written on every face, visible in every gesture. Ambassador spoke first. "The Council has been informed of your offer," he said. His voice was stiff and formal. "We are grateful for humanity's willingness to assist in this crisis." "We are not here out of gratitude for the Council," said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We are here because the threat affects all species in the galaxy, including our own. Our assistance is offered freely, without conditions." She paused, letting the words sink in. "However, we expect certain things in return. Not tribute, not submission, simply recognition. Recognition that humanity has a place in this galaxy. Recognition that we have something to contribute. Recognition that we deserve to be treated as equals." "That is a significant request," said. "It is a simple request," said, "and given the circumstances, I believe it is reasonable." The Council debated among themselves, waited patiently. She had learned from her previous visit. The elder species were slow. They had to be allowed to reach their own conclusions. Finally, High Conductor spoke. "On behalf of we accept humanity's terms," he said. "We will recognize humanity as equal partners in addressing this crisis. When the threat is resolved, we will discuss humanity's permanent status in the accord." It was not everything it hoped for, but it was a beginning. "Then we have work to do," she said. "Tell us everything you know about this threat, and we will tell you what we have discovered." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Human scientists worked alongside researchers, sharing data and theories. Human ships traveled to the edge of space, equipped with sensors and weapons that the elder species had never seen. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand what they were facing. The threat was not a species. It was not a weapon. It was something far stranger and more terrible. It was the universe itself, reacting to the stagnation of intelligent life. Dr. Sarah explained it to the Council in terms they could understand. "The universe is alive," she said. "Not in the way we are alive, but alive nonetheless. It grows, it changes, it evolves, and it has rules. One of those rules is that intelligent life must continue to grow and change as well. When civilizations become stagnant, when they stop exploring and discovering and creating, the universe corrects itself." "That is impossible," Ambassador said. "The universe is matter and energy, nothing more." "The universe is far more complex than we ever imagined," Sarah said. "The humans have been developing new theories about the nature of reality, theories that explain phenomena that current science cannot. And according to those theories, the universe has a purpose, a direction, and that direction does not include civilizations that have stopped moving forward." "Are you saying that we caused this?" asked. His energy form was dim, depleted by the stress of the past weeks. "I am saying that the stagnation of the elder species created conditions that allowed this threat to emerge," Sarah said. "For 100,000 years, the Accord has maintained stability, but stability became stagnation. Growth stopped, innovation ceased, and the universe noticed." "Then what do we do?" Voice of Many asked. "How do we stop something that is part of the universe itself?" Sarah nodded. We start changing, Sarah said. We start growing again. We embrace the chaos that humanity represents instead of trying to control it. We let new ideas flourish even if they are dangerous. We take risks even if they might fail. And that will stop this threat. That will satisfy the universe's purpose, Sarah said. The threat is not trying to destroy us. It is trying to force us to evolve. If we evolve on our own, the threat will have no reason to continue. The council was silent. For beings who had existed for tens of thousands of years, the idea of change was terrifying. They had built their civilizations on stability, on predictability, on the certainty that tomorrow would be like today. But the alternative was extinction. "How do we begin?" Ambassador asked finally. His voice was quiet, defeated. Stood and looked around the table at the 12 great powers. "You begin by accepting that you do not have all the answers," she said. "You begin by listening to younger species instead of dismissing them. You begin by taking risks instead of avoiding them." She smiled, and there was no mockery in it, only hope. "You begin by being more like humans," she said. "Chaotic, unpredictable, alive." Outside the crystal hall, the stars continued to shine. The universe continued to turn. And deep in the outer dark, the ancient force that had been stirred by humanity's defiance was watching. It was pleased with what it saw. Change was coming. After 100,000 years of stagnation, the galaxy was about to wake up. And at the center of it all, the small species from the small blue planet was leading the way. The war against stagnation lasted for 3 years. It was not a war fought with ships and weapons. It was a war fought with ideas and change. Every species in the galaxy, from the oldest to the youngest, was forced to look at itself and ask the same question: are we still growing, or have we stopped? For most of the elder species, the answer was uncomfortable. They had not created anything truly new they had not explored unknown space in eons. They had not taken a genuine risk in longer than most of their citizens could remember. The humans showed them another way. Human explorers pushed into regions of space that had been marked as forbidden for thousands of years. They found wonders that the elder species had forgotten existed. Collapsed stars that sang with frequencies no instrument had ever detected. Clouds of gas that arranged themselves into patterns that seemed almost intelligent. Planets where life had evolved along paths so strange that even the oldest species could not explain them. Human scientists developed theories that shattered centuries of accepted knowledge. They discovered that faster-than-light travel did not work the way anyone had believed. They found new forms of energy that made them look like children playing with matches. They created machines that could think in ways that no biological mind could match. Human artists made works that touched emotions the elder species had forgotten they could feel. Songs that made them weep without knowing why. Paintings that showed the visions of beauty they had never imagined. Stories that reminded them what it felt like to be an individual, separate from the collective. And slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to change. The threat from the outer dark did not disappear immediately, but it began to slow. The disappearances became less frequent. The energy readings stabilized. Whatever force had been correcting the stagnation of intelligent life seemed satisfied that the correction was happening on its own. High Conductor stood at the edge of the affected zone, his energy form stronger than it had been in years. Human ships floated beside vessels, working together to study the phenomenon and ensure it did not return. "I never thought I would say this," said to the human captain beside him, "but I am grateful you walked out of that negotiation room." Captain Maria Santos smiled. She was one of the new generation of human space explorers, born after the first contact with alien species. For her, the galaxy was not a place of fear and uncertainty. It was a place of wonder and opportunity. "If we had not walked out, we would all be dead now," she said. "The stagnation would have continued. The correction would have consumed everything." "Perhaps," said, Or perhaps we would have found another way, but I doubt it. We had become too comfortable, too certain of our place in the universe. We needed someone to shake us awake. He turned to face her, his energy form flickering with colors that Maria had learned to read over the past months. He was expressing something close to respect. "The humans are chaos," he said. "For 100,000 years we feared chaos. We believed it was dangerous, destructive, something to be controlled, but we were wrong. Chaos is life. Chaos is growth. Without it, we become nothing but echoes of what we once were." Maria did not respond. There was nothing to say. The universe had spoken and everyone had listened. In the crystal hall of the Galactic Council, a new era was beginning. Ambassador stood before the assembled representatives, his 4 eyes scanning the room. The hall had changed since the humans first visited. The lighting was brighter. The decorations were more varied. Small differences, but they represented something larger. "We are gathered here to witness a historic moment," said. His voice was different from before, less arrogant, more thoughtful. "For the first time in the history of the Accord, a species will be elevated directly to full membership without serving as an observer." He gestured toward the human delegation. Stood with her team, the same 3 people who had walked out of this room 3 years ago, but they stood differently now. Their shoulders were straight. Their eyes were confident. They had earned their place, not through submission but through action. "The humans have proven themselves in ways that no species ever has," continued. "They have explored regions of space that we had abandoned. They have developed technologies that have benefited every member of the Accord. They have shown us that change is not something to fear, but something to embrace." He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something new in his voice, something that sounded almost like humility. "But more than that, they have saved us. Not through military might or economic power, but through their very nature. They reminded us of what we had forgotten, that the universe rewards those who grow and punishes those who stand still." He turned to face directly. "On behalf of the Galactic Accord, I offer humanity full membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Will you accept?" Stepped forward. The room was silent, every being watching her with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. "We accept," she said, "but we have conditions." A murmur ran through the hall. Even now, even after everything, the humans were negotiating. "We will join the Accord, but we will not become like you were," said. "We will not stop growing. We will not stop questioning. We will not accept limits simply because they have always existed." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each delegation. "We will push the boundaries of what is possible. We will explore the unexplored. We will create things that have never been created. And we will drag the rest of you along with us, whether you like it or not." A few of the elder species made sounds of disapproval, but many others were nodding. "We do not ask you to become human," continued. "We ask you to become what you once were, before you grew old, before you grew comfortable, before you forgot that the universe is vast and full of wonders waiting to be discovered." She extended her hand toward Ambassador. "We offer you partnership," she said. "True partnership. We will learn from you and you will learn from us. Together, we will build something that has never existed before, a galaxy that is not just stable but alive." Looked at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out with his own long, thin fingers and took it. "We accept your conditions," he said. "May the universe guide us both." The hall erupted in sound. Representatives from every species rose to their feet, some cheering, some arguing, some simply watching in wonder. For the first time in 100,000 years, the Galactic Council was experiencing genuine chaos. And it was beautiful. Outside the Crystal Hall, in the endless dark between the stars, the ancient being watched. It had observed the events of the past 3 years with growing interest. The small species from the small blue planet had done exactly what it had hoped they would do. They had shaken the galaxy out of its slumber. They had forced the elder species to change. They had reminded everyone that the universe was not a place to be managed, but a place to be explored. The being was satisfied. For now, there was no need for further intervention. The galaxy was moving again, growing again, becoming what it was meant to become. But the being would continue to watch. That was its purpose, to ensure that intelligent life never forgot its role in the grand design of the cosmos. And if the galaxy ever fell back into stagnation, if the elder species ever forgot the lessons they had learned, the being would be ready to stir things up again. But somehow it did not think that would be necessary, not as long as the humans were around. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for weeks. In every city, on every continent, humans gathered to mark the moment when their species had taken its place among the stars. Fireworks lit up the skies. Music filled the streets. Strangers embraced each other as if they were old friends. President William stood on the balcony of the government headquarters in New Geneva, looking out at the crowds below. Stood beside him, tired but proud. "We did it," William said. "Against all odds, against everything that stood in our way, we did it." "We did something," said, "but this is not an ending, it is a beginning. The real work starts now." "What do you mean?" Pointed up at the night sky, where the stars shone bright and clear. "Out there are thousands of worlds we have never seen, millions of mysteries we have never solved, billions of opportunities we have never explored. Full membership in the Accord is not a destination. It is a doorway." She smiled, and there was excitement in her eyes. "We walked away from the negotiation table because we refused to accept limits on what we could become. Now we have to prove that we meant it. We have to keep pushing, keep growing, keep being the chaos that the universe needs us to be." Williams nodded slowly. "And if we do not, if we grow comfortable like the elder species did, then something will come along to shake us awake," said. "That is the way of the universe, growth or death. There is no third option." She turned to face him. "But I am not worried," she said. "Humans have never been good at sitting still. We have always reached for more, dreamed of more, fought for more. It is in our nature, and as long as that nature survives, we will never stop growing." Williams raised his glass in a toast. "To humanity," he said, "the chaos at the heart of the galaxy." "To humanity," echoed, "may we never change." They drank together, and above them the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. In the months and years that followed, humanity spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Human colonies appeared in regions that the elder species had declared impossible to settle. Human ships explored the farthest reaches of known space and then pushed beyond into the unknown. Human ideas infected every civilization they touched, spreading change and growth wherever they went. Some species welcomed the humans. They saw in them a chance to break free from the constraints that had held them back. They became humanity's closest allies, their ancient culture revitalized by the energy and creativity of their new partners. They continued their secret relationship with Earth, sharing information and resources in exchange for the promise of change. Other species resisted. They saw the humans as a threat to the order they had built. The Empire, unable to adapt to a galaxy that no longer valued military strength above all else, retreated into isolation. A few others followed, choosing stagnation over change. But most species found a middle path. They accepted the humans not as masters or servants, but as partners. They learned from them, worked with them, and slowly, painfully began to grow again. The Accord itself was transformed. The old rules were discarded, the tribute system was abolished, observer status was eliminated. Every species was judged on its contributions, not its age or power. The strong helped the weak. The old learned from the young. The galaxy became something it had never been before. A community. Ambassador, who had once looked down on the humans as primitive children, became one of their greatest advocates. He traveled the galaxy, speaking to any species that would listen about the transformation he had witnessed. "I have lived for 3,000 years," he would say. "I thought I had seen everything. I thought I knew everything. I was wrong. The humans showed me that wisdom is not about knowing. It is about learning, and learning never stops." He would pause, his 4 eyes distant with memory. "They walked away from our negotiation table, and the universe was stirred. They refused to accept the limits we tried to place on them, and they changed everything. Not through force or wealth or ancient knowledge, but through their very nature, through their refusal to stop growing." He would lean forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That is the lesson they taught us. That is the gift they gave us. The universe is not a place to be conquered or controlled. It is a place to be explored, to be discovered, to be loved. And as long as we remember that, we will never fall into stagnation again." 50 years after the humans walked out of the Galactic Council, stood on the bridge of the first ship to travel beyond the boundaries of the known universe. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined with years. But her eyes were still sharp, still burning with the same fire that had carried her through the negotiations so long ago. "Ready to make history again?" Captain Santos asked. She had aged well, her dark hair now streaked with gray, her command presence stronger than ever. "I have been ready my whole life," said. The ship was called the New Horizon. It was equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic to the beings who had dismissed humanity as a young and primitive species. The Nexus drive that Doctor had invented had been refined and improved over the decades. Now it could reach distances that no one had thought possible. Beyond the edge of the known universe lay the outer dark, the place where the ancient beings slumbered. No one knew what they would find there. No one knew if they would return. But that had never stopped humanity before. "Initiate the drive," Captain Santos ordered. The ship hummed with power. Outside the windows, the stars began to stretch and blur. "You know," said, "when I walked out of that negotiation room, I had no idea where it would lead. I just knew that I could not accept what they were offering. I could not let humanity become something small and limited." She smiled at the distorted stars. "I think that is what makes us human. We do not know where we are going. We do not know what we will find, but we go anyway, because the journey is the point. The growth is the point. The becoming is the point." The drive activated fully, and the ship leaped into the unknown. In the Crystal Hall of the Galactic Council, a new ambassador from Earth was being welcomed. She was young, barely 30 years old, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew her place in the universe. "We are honored to receive you," Voice of Many said. They were no longer the silent observers they had once been. They had embraced change more fully than almost any other species, allowing diversity of thought within the collective for the first time in their history. "The honor is mine," the ambassador said. "My name is Hope. I am great-granddaughter." The hall fell silent. Had become a legend, the woman who had walked away from the negotiation table and changed the galaxy. Her descendants were treated with respect wherever they went. "We have heard that your great-grandmother has traveled beyond the edge of the known universe," Ambassador said. His voice was old now, weak, but his 4 eyes were still sharp. "She has," Hope said. "We do not know if she will return, but that does not matter. She has spent her entire life pushing boundaries. It is only fitting that her final journey should be the greatest one of all." "And you," asked, "will you continue her work?" Hope smiled. It was a smile that all the elder species had learned to recognize over the past 50 years. A human smile, full of confidence and curiosity and the absolute certainty that whatever came next would be interesting. "That is what humans do," she said. "We push, we grow, we become, and we never ever stop." She looked around the hall at the representatives of 100 different species, each one changed by the events that her great-grandmother had set in motion. The day humans left at the table of negotiation, the universe was stirred, she said. But that was just the beginning. The universe is still being stirred, and as long as humanity exists, it always will be. Outside the crystal hall, the stars shone bright. The galaxy turned slowly, full of life and growth and change. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the ancient being watched and smiled. The humans had kept their promise. The chaos would never end. And the universe was grateful.